thank you for joining us today. Today's discussion, we're focusing on the stigma around mental health in Arab families. A lot of people feel like they can't open up about how they're feeling because they're scared of being judged, misunderstood, or told to stay quiet. Today I'm honored to have Naseem Saleh, who will be sharing insight on this topic. Before we start, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey?
Hi Fatima, my name is Naseem. I am Palestinian. I'm queer, currently a practicing psychotherapist in Chicago, Illinois. I recently graduated from my master's program in counseling in 2023, and I actually started my master's program during the pandemic, so it was pretty rough. So everything was virtual and online, so that was pretty rough on me and everyone else involved for sure. But yeah, so I'm definitely early career. I'm a child of immigrants, specifically Palestinian refugees. My parents were both born and raised in Palestine. My mom is from Jerusalem, Al-Quds, and my dad actually doesn't know where he was actually born in Palestine. Both my parents were actually raised during the years of the Nakba, but my dad was actually born in a tent in a camp, jail zone refugee camp. So yeah, and they don't talk about it too much. So I don't know everything. So they're from there. I have many siblings, of course. Yeah. I've been a practicing psychotherapist. I predominantly see Arab folks, people from Middle Eastern descent, the Arab diaspora. I currently working at a private practice that's also Arab owned, which is really amazing and awesome. We recently opened up in April of last year. We've gotten a lot of Arab folks who've been reaching out to the practice, which is amazing. Also, especially considering the genocide that's been the ongoing genocide. So it's really been it was a calling to open up the practice, and there was urgency in that, and it's a necessity to have that, to give the opportunity to folks right now. But yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. To start off, in your experience, how is mental health typically viewed in Arab households or communities? And why do you think it's considered as a taboo topic in many Arab households?
Growing up, I can also speak to my own experience as well. I think when you grow up Arab, especially in an Arab household, I also grew up in a Muslim household, so I was raised Muslim, and a lot of it is it was pretty much almost not there, it was very much present, but it was not acknowledged, because typically when we think about health in general, we don't really talk about it. It is a taboo, because we as Arabs, we are very much solution focused. So it's if something's wrong, we have to be able to see it. And that's not the case with mental health, right? That's something that is internal struggles. We don't see that very much on the outside. And I think there's also this sense of gratitude that's ingrained in us, of you have a house over your head, you have food on the table, why are you crying? So there's shame involved as well, right? And so I think that's typically why it's taboo, because it's not talked about enough. Really, it's just not talked about enough. And I think there's also fear of yeah, of course, criticism, disappointment, how dare you, And I think also, so it's really about keeping it together and continuing to move forward. And as long as you're in good health physically, that's all that matters. Everything else doesn't matter as much. So I think that really the taboo in that is we just don't talk about it enough, typically. So if no one's talking about it, there's no need to talk about it, right? So that's what I would say for that one, in a gist of things. Yeah,
that's true. That's the common thing that I always hear. Let's talk about the belief that shapes those views. What are some common misunderstandings you have seen in Arab communities when it comes to mental illness?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think some common misconceptions about mental health is that I think as Arabs, how do I word this? I think as Arabs, we like to mask it with religion a lot, mental health, of oh my god, the devil has you in its grasp, the demon is inside of you. And I think that really is a big skew, and it's a poor image of what mental illness is, the journey of it. And another big misconception is predominant issue within the Arab community is addiction, drug addiction, substance use. And I think that really, we kind of just see problems as themselves. So we kind of take it as the drug addiction is the issue and you need to stop it, you need to get better. which is not false. Like, of course, it is destroying your mental health, but that is not the root of your mental health issue. So I think a lot of it is definitely seeing it as very, one-sided, essentially. And I think that's something that's big within the auto community, and it shows up in different ways. So I think that those were some things that came to mind for me personally when it comes to like common misconceptions. Yeah, I don't know if you would add, but yeah.
What are some common things people hear in Arab households that make it harder for them to talk about mental health?
Yeah, so that's also a really good question. And common things that people would hear that make it hard to talk about it. I think kind of like what I was stating earlier. I mean, this is something that I grew up with personally. I think some common things that we would hear are like, you have a roof over your head, you have food on the table, you should be like, what are you sad about? What are you crying for? Or even like, why are you crying? Why are you upset? So it's kind of like interrogation is what these common things people hear. I think also too, something that would get some, would be kind of controversial, but I think people would agree with this, is trauma Olympics that show up with our auto parents. And what I mean by that is like, there's fear, right, in opening up to parents, but there's that huge fear of like, I'm going to be misunderstood, or like, I'm not going to be validated for what I'm saying or how I'm feeling, because my parents are going to come in with that classic narrative of, let me tell you about my time. I had to walk millions miles and take water here. And that's not to discredit their experience. Of course, like it was a lot that they had to go through. Of course, they sacrificed a lot, right? They had a hard life. Of course they did. But it's almost like the trauma Olympics, right? Like I had it harder than you, so this is nothing compared to what I had went through, which is, I feel like that's a big one that we hear, that we don't talk about enough. But I think that instills shame in us when we hear that, of like, wow, okay, yeah, my parents did go through a lot. And then that can also enhance the people pleasing, right? Of like, man, my parents went through a lot. Like, why am I complaining about this? I shouldn't be complaining about this, which is harmful, right? To even to think that, right? Because it sort of plays off of that, feeds off of that. So I think that's a huge one that I feel like people don't talk about enough. Which, yeah, I'll stop there. There's so much more to that, but I feel like that's a really big one.
What can we do to help Arab families be more open and understanding about mental health, especially the older generations?
I think like with a question like this, it's really simple. Just talking about it. Like, I think, being clear about it when you're talking about it is also important, like if you're thinking about confiding in your parents or just being more open with them, like, I just wanted to get this off my chest. I'm not looking for a solution. I'm not looking for anything to be fixed here. Like, I just wanted to get this off my chest because I love you and like I care about you, and I would hope you would feel the same way about me, and I can be able to be open about this stuff in plain sight, like, yeah, I can just vent about this, So I think it's really just talking about it, literally, and spreading more awareness about it, but also like, I think also helping them understand mental health in very concrete ways. And, one thing that comes to mind with this question too is like, I'll think about times in my experience growing up with my parents, is that a lot of times, like, whenever I cry or like I'm feeling depressed for some reason, like my mom would always, her automatic instinctual response is to give me like a cup of water, which is like, I feel like a lot of people would resonate with, which is not to say that like that's not helpful. It's helpful. Yeah, like that water helps, right? Physically, it feels nice in my body, but it doesn't address what I'm actually going through. So I think like bringing in what's already known and what's already playing out and helping them understand that through that and making connections, like explaining like, this is what mental health is. So I think like that's important. And I think also, especially for older generations, I would connect mental health to ongoing systematic issues that we see playing out. I think that can be such a great conversation in regards to mental health, especially when we see the Palestine and the genocide. How mental health and like the occupation. I think a lot of my Palestinian clients too, it's like they live with anxiety, they live with depression because of the environmental conditions that they lived in for over half of their life. So thinking about how that can be connected to mental health and how can we come back to normalcy the way that we see it, the way we envision it.
If someone feels like their family does not understand what they're going through, how can they still take this step toward getting the support they need either within or outside the home?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think something I will say here is that, especially within Arab families, I know a lot of the time we like to throw out the language of like, we're so dysfunctional. Like we're so messy, and that's not to say that's not true. That's true. Like we use those words because they are coming from a real place of like, this is what's dysfunctional. Like there's so much conflict. That's what that means, right? Like we don't know how to communicate with each other. We get angry over the most smallest things, or we just don't know how to process emotions, or, this is how we do it. And so we can't really process the things that we want to process or feel like we can't process. So I think a lot of it is just like understanding that you can say as much as you want to like your parent, your mom or your dad or your sister or brother. Like you can say as much as you want to get them to understand what it is that you're going through. But I think at the end of the day, and you might find that like I'm still getting the same response, and that's not your fault. Really, it's important to remember that, especially within Arab families, there is a beast that you're dealing with. And when I say beast, it's not that you can't change them, it's that you can't change the system. The system operates as a whole, as a collective. So I think that when we think about, man, I wish that I want to be open, but I'm scared that they won't understand, which they probably won't. Most likely. So it's also understanding that like it's a system issue. So you know what I mean? Like you could, and even when you do feel scared too, I will say as well that like, I think especially with Arab families, like it's like our kin are so important to us. That's something that is valued. But also like I would, there's I think also in this new generation, which I feel like could be helpful, is like family doesn't mean blood. Doesn't always need to mean blood. It does mean blood inherently, but family can be what you make it be. And family can be people in your life that understand you. That can be family, So finding people like friends, and also finding, people in your circle that understand you and understand what you're going through because you're living the same reality. So that's always an option. Like your family's not going to betray you because you're talking about yourself and you're going through something. So I think it's really just about, but also again, it goes back to the point of being reminding yourself that you're not the issue here. You're not doing anything wrong. It's the system's fault. And that's something that you don't have power over, and you cannot change that. But you can look elsewhere, and you can build your own little family too, outside of your family. And, I think something I like to end here with this too is, with this point is, especially for Palestinians, I will speak to families, it's like, they can support you, but they're not giving the support that you need. Your family can still be supportive, can still be caring, but it's still important to have other options that can support you in ways that you need to be supported and cared for. It's not to say like I need to get rid of my family, I need to cut them off just because they don't understand. Like that's more Western family. Like my mother cussed me out. I cut her off. I'm not talking to her anymore. But I think with Arab families, it's like, not to say abuse is okay. No, it's not okay. That needs to be talked about. But also, they're not giving you support that you need. So it's good to have options. And you're not neglecting them. But also understanding that, but they can still support me in other ways. So it's important to think about it in that way too. Yeah. That was a lot. But there's a lot to that one. But yeah, that's what I would say.
Thank you for sharing your insight and being here with us today. Before we end, is there any quote or message you'd like to share with the audience?
Man. I should have thought about this one more. I think I would probably say that because there's a theme of like fixing and problem solving within Arab, culture, not even just families. Something that I hold with me is that like we don't need fixing or solving. We need connection. That's really what we need. So I think like that's something that I like to share with people. Like we don't have to fix something, because if there's something that you want to share or be open more about and it's troubling you, or it's just the internal struggle that you're having, but you don't know who to go to, or like you're afraid if you go to this person, like it's not going to be met well. Like I think it's important to remember that because you're having that conflict, that issue, that doesn't mean that like something is wrong with you. That doesn't mean that you're the problem. I think it's really not that you're the problem, but like the issue itself, that like that's not the problem. I think really you just need connection. We don't need to solve anything, because if you find that you're met with problem solving, or like, oh, you should just do this, someone tells you that, then that means that like your feelings are wrong. You shouldn't be feeling your feelings. You know, you should be doing something with them. It's stupid to just be sitting with them, which is wrong. It's just completely wrong, right? And that, again, that's from the system. That's a system response. So I think understanding that like you just need connection, and like it's uncomfortable for sure, because it's like you're not used to that, it's not familiar, but that's really what's needed at the end of the day, to just be able to sit with that, and that's it. Yeah.